All right. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Melissa Cardona. I am the Senior Research Specialist for the Autism Society Inland Empire. And this evening tonight, we have Miss Isabel Torres from Inland County's Legal Services. I want to thank her and thank you guys for joining us this evening to listen to her speak about different changes that are occurring in the special education. And if you guys have any general questions, she's here to guide us as best as she can. And I just wanted to let you guys know that this webinar is being recorded. We also have our wonderful Spanish interpretation available. So if anybody needs interpretation at the bottom, just click the little world interpretation and you can switch it over to English. I'm sorry, to Spanish. With that, we're going to go through our presentation. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat or in the Q&A. And at the end of Ms. Isabel Torres's presentation, she will go ahead and take any questions and answers with time that we have permitted. Thank you again, Ms. Isabel, for joining us. I'll let you take the floor.
Okay, just wanted to confirm you guys can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Isabel Torres. I'm an attorney here at Inland County's Legal Services, and today I'm going to be doing a presentation on major special education law changes in 2025. Okay, so a little bit about who we are as an organization. We are a nonprofit. We provide free legal aid to low-income and no-income individuals. We do provide services for those individuals in the Inland Empire, which includes San Bernardino and Riverside counties. We do have a variety of practice groups, which I can cover in the next slide. And our website is down below at www.inlandlegal.org, and our intake line is 888-245-4257. This presentation will be provided to all those who registered, so this information will be available to you guys. I do have a question, Melissa. Do I have to slow down, or is the interpreter doing like a live interpretation of what I'm saying?
She is doing a live interpretation.
Okay. I will try and remember to speak a little slower, keeping in mind that she is doing a live interpretation.
Thank you.
So we have 8 practice groups that specialize in different areas of law. They include our housing team, our family law team, our public benefits and education team. We have a healthcare team, consumer, elder law, immigration, systemic, and impact litigation. I'll give them a minute, and then in this next slide, I do go into a little bit more as to what these practice groups services they provide. Okay, so our housing team covers eviction defense, foreclosure, tenant rights, unlawful rent increases, utility shutoffs, wrongful evictions, habitability issues, and reasonable accommodations. We also have an elder law team. They provide services for simple estate planning matters, grandparent visitation, elder abuse restraining orders. We also have a family law group, which does divorce proceedings, paternity actions, child custody and visitation, child and spousal support, domestic violence restraining order matters. All of that is covered in those practice groups. So if you guys see me kind of pause for a bit, I'm just trying to give the interpreter some time. Okay. Please let me know, Melissa, if it comes through the chat or something that I'm going too fast for the interpreter.
You're good. Good, right.
Okay. So we have the public benefits and education practice group. This is the practice group that I am a part of. We do service an array of benefits. So everything from federal, county, state benefits. Federal typically is our Social Security benefits, everything under that umbrella. Okay. Thank you. So far, so good. Everything under that umbrella, which includes Social Security, retirement, early retirement, Social Security, disability insurance, supplemental security income, so the SSDI, SSI benefits, child SSI. We do veterans benefits. We also do our county cases, which are our CalFresh, the food stamps. We have CalWorks, and then general relief for general assistance, depending on what county you're in. We also have EDD benefits, so unemployment, state disability insurance benefits. And then we have the education practice group area, which we do representation for students with disabilities. There does have to be that nexus where the child has to be needs services based on a disability, whether that's filing a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights, so the OCR, the California Department of Education. Maybe the school isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing. Maybe there's some sort of issue with discipline based on the child's disability. Maybe there's issues with the IEP or the 504 plan. And we can do representation at meetings and then potentially a due process. It is on a case-by-case basis, which you would need to get to rejection letters from outside attorneys, and then we can assess the matter on a case-by-case basis, whether or not we would represent on any cases. We also have our healthcare team, which is Medi-Cal and Medicare services. We have our medical billing. We provide services in-home support services and covered California. We also have our consumer law team, which assists with consumer fraud against seniors, tax assistance, and bankruptcy. And we have our immigration team, who helps individuals with U visas, T visas, VAWAs. And I feel like we're missing a little bit on immigration, but if any questions, you guys can contact our organization via the website or our intake line, and they can help clarify any questions. So now, for the purpose of this training or presentation, this is kind of like a general overview of what we will be discussing. So we're going to be discussing, I think, about 5 new law updates in the special education world. The first one is going to touch on the transition planning starting at age 14. The second one is AB 1938, which is enhanced protections for deaf, hard of hearing students. Then we have AB 2173, which is going to be the terminology shift in emotional disability, which replaces emotional disturbance. And then we also have SB 483, which is a ban on restraints. And then SB 939, which is neurodiversity resources that must be posted online. Okay, so this first law update is AB 438, which is transition planning now begins earlier. So starting July 1st, 2025, the Individualized Education Program, or the IEP team, must consider and include measurable post-secondary goals and corresponding transition services as early as a student's first high school IEP, if deemed appropriate, rather than waiting until age 16 as previously mandated. So essentially what this means is that when a child hits their 14 or before their first high school IEP, the IEP team must now consider whether it is appropriate for the team to start planning for transition services, so services for the child post graduation. Previously, it was just mandated to be in place by the time the child was 16. Now, the law isn't saying that there must be one in place by the age of 14. It's just saying that the team must now consider planning at that first high school IEP at the age of 14. And then if they say, no, the child isn't ready for an ITP or an individualized transition program that is included as part of the IEP process, they must have some justification or reason for saying we're going to delay on implementing these transition services until age 16. Some of the benefits and the purpose for which this law was passed is they saw that students were benefiting more when these planning services or this planning by the team was taking place because they were given more time to really build up the skills that are needed in order to kind of survive in like in jobs or whatever career path students are going to take after high school and after transitioning. Let's see. So our next update is AB 1938, which is language access for deaf and hard of hearing students. So essentially this one is by July 1st, 2025, schools and local education agencies implementing inclusion or universal design for learning, UDL, they must now consider the full language and communication needs of a students who are deaf, hard of hearing, or deaf and blind from ages 0 to 22. The IEP team must address language access, direct peer or professional communication in the student's mode, academic level, and review placement and service options. So essentially what the team now has to do is they have to consider more than just what the child needs. They want this law was put in place because they want the teams to consider the direct communication between the student and the peers and their teachers and their support staff, and so they can now consider placement. So not just placement in the special day class or general ed class, but the team must also consider whether it's more appropriate to move the student to maybe a non-public school or a different school within the same district, but where they have more access to peers or support staff that can better communicate with them. So they really wanted to emphasize the interaction and the communication of students with deaf and hard of hearing disabilities. So at a glance, in summary, it just requires LEAs. If you see that the acronym LEAs is the local educational agency, they must consider the full language access needs, not just directly what the student needs to improve their communication, but their communication experience with those around them. It covers deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf blindness blind students. So our next update is AB 2173, which is the emotional disability terminology. So as of January 1st, 2025, California state law now allows the term emotional disability to be used instead of emotional disturbance when categorizing the child in one of the 13 federal categories for eligibility for an IEP. So what this means is when you are trying to determine whether or not your child needs special education services, one of the first things that the school will do is they're gonna assess your child, and then in the educational setting, so they're gonna do assessments, and then after assessing them, they're gonna come back and see whether or not their evaluations show that the child's ability to learn in a classroom is being impeded and they need special education services based on one of the outlined 13 federal categories. One of those categories is the emotional disturbance category. This term was typically kind of carried a lot of negative stigma, and that impacted the ability for the team and the parents, so school team and the parents, to come together and provide services for a child, because there was a lot of resistance from parents being they didn't want their child labeled as emotionally disturbed. So one of the things California kind of discussed in making this new law was that they would want to change that term or make it available for the IP team to now use emotional disability, not emotional disturbance. So while the federal term is still emotional disturbance, the California state law includes emotional disability. So in practice, what that means is that if you're in an IEP team and the IEP team is using emotional disturbance, it's technically not legally wrong, but you have every right to go and ask, like, can we change the verbiage in this to read emotional disability? That way, the IEP reflects emotional disability as the qualifying category for your child. And it just kind of is more respectful. Like I said, it carries less stigma, um, and parents have that right to request that. So the following one is the SB 939 legal update. It's the regarding neurodiversity resources. As of January 1st, 2025, SB 939 requires the superintendent of public instruction to post and annually update statewide neurodiversity resources and notify all local education agencies. So starting this school year, in 2025, 2026, this school districts and charter schools must post these resources on their websites. The state's anti-bullying training must include strategies for supporting neurodivergent students. What this means is that your districts must have a section in their websites that include the links to these resources. I've included one here. I don't know if I click on it, did it switch for you guys to the literacy and dyslexia, or is it still the presentation?
No, it switched.
Okay, so this is an example of what should be in the websites, for your school websites. So for individuals with or children with neurodivergency, as part of their IP, what they're trying to learn, what they have is like dyslexia and literacy modules. So the point of this law is that parents and students have free resources in order to better learn and better have just additional skills to kind of bridge that gap, whether it be ADHD, dyslexia. Let me see if it shows. I can just show you an example of this. So here is a 1-hour free course that is accessible to students. Here's a little bit of an overview of it. So essentially what it is, it's this one in particular is a module to help parents and students examine, define, and identify understanding dyslexia. So I'm going to kind of navigate back, but the purpose of having these resources for parents or on this website is not just for the students, it's also for parents, so that parents can better understand their child's learning hindrance, disability, and that there's free resources for both children and parents to learn. I've already kind of checked a couple of the districts and locally, and I've seen where some of our local local districts have them up on their website, some don't. So if not, kind of you can go ahead and push your district like, hey, I don't see these neurodiversity resources. They do have to link back to the one I provided, but it is their responsibility to be posting these on their websites. Okay, so a little bit of preface before I start on this last update. This last update does mention an incident where a child lost their life, and this is a legal update as a result of that. So I did want to preface that I am going to get into a little bit of the details of what happened with this child and why this new law was put into place. So this new update is SB 483, which is a ban on prone restraints. So this was effective January 1st in 2025, where the state of California banned the use of prone restraint, which is a behavioral control technique involving physically restraining a student face down for any duration in all educational settings. This includes removing the prior emergency use exception for students with special needs, and this applies to any school employee or service provider working with a student in public schools, charter schools, non-public schools, and agencies. So what that looks like in terms of the prone restraint is when a child is being held face down. So there's hands on the child and the child is being face down. So that is what is completely now has been banned in for any duration of time. That doesn't mean that a child cannot they won't use any restraints. An example of what may come up is a child with think it was like severe autism, and this is just as an example, severe autism, and they had a spork, those sporks that are given for lunch, and they were using it to kind of, harm themselves and harm others. So there was a trained staff grabs the arm just to, remove the spork from the child's hand. What that resulted in, because there is a restraint on the child, they have to immediately do a report. And then the school is obligated to, within 48 hours, hold a meeting with the parent and as part of the IEP team to discuss whether or not the behavior intervention plan, or a BIP, if there is in place, if it's already in place, if it's still appropriate for the student's behaviors. So in the event that there's some sort of concern that your child has behavior issues, you should ask the school to have the behavioral assessment on the child to determine whether or not there needs to be a BIP or a behavior intervention plan, so that you can discuss with the team that there can be, positive reinforcements, highlight positive behaviors, so that the child is then learning to react or handle situations, and they get rewarded by using, the appropriate behavior. You can also ask for a functional behavior assessment, which is the FBA, in order to, if you start noticing that your child might have behavior issues, so that the team can address it early on, and to prevent or minimize the situation, and where any restraint would be necessary. So the reason why this ban happened kind of goes back to a child named Max Benson. It was a 13-year-old autistic child who lost his life after being held in a prone restraint in 2018. This was a restraint that was about, I believe it was about 90 minutes. So this child was held face down. It is a little, some of the details are a little graphic. The child was held face down, even after he was no longer, fighting or any danger to himself or those around him. And there was a delay in calling for medical attention, and this resulted, unfortunately, in the child's passing. This happened at an NPS, a non-public school. That non-public school was closed, but because of such a horrific incident, this law is now in place that under no circumstances are children to be held face down. Even in what was previously the exception, was that, there was an emergency use, like, well it was like a last resort. Now that's not even allowed. So I believe that is all I have. Oh, one more slide. I did include a few reliable resources for everyone. The California Department of Education, the California Legislative Information, and Disability Rights California, which keeps up and is usually has a lot of these legal updates and what that means for parents. And then this last one has, it's time for questions, and I also have my my direct email in case there are any questions and after this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Isabel, for informing us on those new bills that have passed. I do have a few questions here in the chat. One of them states, does AB 438 follow them to college, or is it only in high school?
Let's see. Okay, can I get a little clarification on the question? Because The AB 438 is the transition plan. So essentially what that means is the school has the responsibility to create a transition plan to prepare them post-college, but it's not enforced by the colleges. Is that what that question meant?
Let me see. Yes,
Yes.
you replied
Okay.
yes.
Is there, let's see,
Okay.
I'll look the chat.
The next one was for AB 1938. Does that apply to children who have auditory processing disorders?
Yes, the one for deaf, yes, it did apply for children with auditory processing disorders as well.
Okay. So we currently have those two. I did have a question for the SB 939 for the resources. Is there a place that has a little bit more information on what the criterias are, whether it's a public school or a charter? And where should they have those resources displayed at?
So yes, so if you want more information, you can look up the CSU collaborative, which is the one who led the research behind this legal update. They do have a lot of resources on their website. Um, and then where should it be displayed? There was no specific like page, like it needs to be under the education or special education training resources. What the law says is that it just needs to be in a clear and easy to locate spot for parents. But it didn't like mention a specific tab or a specific section of a district's website. But for more information, you can just Google the UC CSU Collaborative Neurodiversity Resources.
Awesome, thank you so much. One of
Mhm.
the questions is, will they be receiving the presentation? Yes, the presentation is recorded. Everybody who has registered will receive an email with the Zoom presentation, and we'll also attach the PowerPoint presentation to that email. Another question is for the AB 1938, how can one advocate for their child's needs with the code? How would you advise a parent to go and present that to the school if they feel that the school is currently not providing the support?
So I would always start with trying to work with your IEP team. If you can call an IEP team, an IEP meeting for whatever reason. You don't have to wait for like the annual IEP or the triannual IEP meeting. If you go to the IEP meeting and you let them know like, hey, I feel like we need to consider this as an IEP team, and you don't get any movement on that subject, that is something that maybe we can potentially assist with. You can reach out to us via the website on there. You can do an online intake, or we have our the number on at the top of I think it's the second slide. And then you can just say, hey, I'm having issues with the district implementing or considering this in the IEP. My child needs it, XYZ. And then we can, take a look at the case and see if it's something that we can assist, either helping you in the background, like how to advocate in an IEP meeting, or if representation is warranted.
Thank you. Yes, she will, they will probably reach out to you because they have a meeting coming up soon and probably are gonna have a little bit more detailed questions for you guys.
Okay.
And then for the SB 939, can school sites provide resources like these in their webinars?
I cannot
Like
speak to
webinars.
what the district what the district can or can't do. You can always ask, but I can. But wait, you're saying can they provide? Sorry. So just so I'm clear, the resources like the literacy and dyslexia, that should be on their websites. The 1930 also apply to students with intellectual disabilities. Which one was the 1938?
That's the resources.
I would have to check on that. I don't recall the intellectual disability, the IDD.
Thank you for that. Does anybody have any more questions? Someone's asking that they did not think that the SB 939 was specific to dyslexia.
It's
Is it neurodiversity in general?
correct. Neurodiversity in general, not specific to dyslexia. That is just one of the resources that, can apply. They can apply to.
Right. Does anybody have any other questions or any topics they want to bring up? Give them a minute. Let me ask our interpreter if she has anything on her side. One moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think, okay. Okay.
Any suggestions? Let me pull up the one I do recall seeing and see kind of where I've seen districts post these neurodiversity resources. 1 second.
I'll be honest, that was one bill that I did not know. I knew the other ones, but I was not aware of the resources. So now I'm gonna go check my districts too.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen again. And this is I'm out in the Coachella Valley. So this is one of the websites. So I just put Palm Springs Unified Neurodiversity Resources, and it came up, and they have it under students and parents, and then neurodiversity resources, and they have it all here. And this is essentially what the law requires, that they have the resources listed here, and then just the general. So this is, or I can probably, I don't know if they'll have access to the control copy, if they'll have access to the chat after, but this is where they can get more information regarding the initiative and resources in general for it. I can put it in,
You can put it
or
in
you
the
know what,
chat.
I'll add it to the PowerPoint presentation as well.
Okay. Thank you. So I can also copy it. Send it to.
Okay, it's been added to the presentation, so it can be included when they receive it.
Okay, and I also put it in the chat to share with everybody who's attending.
Okay.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Let me see if we have any other questions. We had someone make a comment that they don't believe their district has posted this either. And yeah, I thank you for sharing that knowledge with us, because I'm gonna do some homework and definitely look and see, because those resources are important.
Yeah, I also checked, and not all of our local districts have it, and I was like,
And I have a guest asking for phone number.
okay,
can
I'll go
put that.
to our intake line. Maybe let me make this a little bigger.
And I'll type it in the chat if you can pull it up.
Okay. Share screen. Oops. Where's I can't find the present button, but this is our line. 888-245-4257.
2, 4,
Oh, here it is.
5, 7.
And there's the page.
Okay. You said 888-245-4257.
Correct.
So I have another question. My son is in public school, but if they switch their son to homeschool, does he still need to have an IEP and a transition program?
Okay, so I'm gonna rely on just to make sure I'm giving correct information on my on Marsha and Delisha, but essentially if they are registered with they still with a school district, the school district still has that responsibility to ensure that services are provided to a child, including which would include the ITP.
Yeah. I want to make sure that we answered her question. I think Liliana, she's on your side. Switch. Did we answer her question? Okay, Liliana? Perfect. Thank you. Okay. All right, we still have time for questions. If anybody has general questions they would like to ask, right now is the time. Give them a few more minutes. I think everybody's gonna do homework about the resources. Okay, I think that's it. I don't think we have any more questions that I see here. So I'll go ahead and stop the recording. Oh, good for you. I love advocates. If you guys do not find the resources on your district's page, feel free to send an email and you guys can tag in the SB 939. And then the best place to find the law was that UCSCU.
Yeah, so it's the UC and then CSU collaborative.
CSU. Said it backwards. And then that way we can at least put in that link so that way you can share that information with them. So a question I got was, with the resources, if the districts are not following the rules, is it mediation? What's the best way for parents to advocate and to make sure that this gets put in on their sites?
It all depends on the child's individual. Oh wait, are you talking about the specific?
The specific resources they're asking.
Yeah, I would ask them to put it on, and then if not, yeah, I'm not really sure what that recourse would be. I don't think it'd be like mediation or due process for that specific thing, because that's more of an issue of like the district, not with a particular student. But if you're talking about with like a particular student, they're not wanting to implement it, or consider these resources, then we can assist. But in terms of them not doing it, I I would have to get back to you guys on that. Oh, you're talking about your particular case? Okay. Yeah, so if it's in your particular case and they're not, and this district isn't doing something that they're supposed to, and you're asking for it, then that is something where you can contact us and then we can determine whether maybe it's just us stepping in, if appropriate at an IEP meeting and asking for it, or negotiating in terms with with the district, and then they're still at a standstill, we can see what that recourse can be, whether it's filing the compliant a complaint with the California Department of Education, if that's appropriate because the district's not doing what they're supposed to, or if due process, it's time for due process. But in terms, I would always kind of start with trying to work with the IEP team, and if they're really giving you pushback, give us a call and see if there's something we can do.
Thank you for that information. Are these new California state laws and not federal laws?
Correct. These are California state laws.
If your child has autism, are they required to give you an IEP?
It depends. if the child has a diagnosis, is one thing. However, if the child's condition is impeding their ability to learn in the classroom, um, then that's when the school has a responsibility of like providing support and services, whether that be a 504 or an IEP. It kind of depends on how limited or how impacted the child is in the educational setting. So it can be maybe you can start, if you haven't already done this, you can ask that the child be assessed in the classroom setting. If they have and you don't agree with their assessments, you can request an IEE, or if you have outside reports, outside assessments, you can bring those as supporting evidence for why you think your child needs an IEP to succeed in the classroom. I see. I just noticed my district does not have ITP in the abbreviation acronyms. Can I ask to have that added? Yeah, I think you can ask to have it added. I'm not sure if there's, I would have to check to see if there's any requirement that certain acronyms be posted on a district.
Yeah, and then another question I got was, why are schools very hesitant in giving children one-to-one aids?
So I can give you kind of a general my understanding of it, why that's kind of like a last resort, a one-to-one aid, is because the district has the responsibility to keep the child in the least restrictive environment. So when you have a one-to-one aid, they have a lot more intervention, a lot more assistance with the child. So the school is always going to try and do what's, it's going to say like the least intervention for the child, right? Because the goal is to have the child kind of succeed and not have to rely so much on all these supplemental services and assistance. So there can be a whole other slew of factors as to why the one-on-one isn't being given, but just from the standpoint of the districts needing to provide the least restrictive environment, meaning the least amount of interventions to the child. That's kind of why it looks harder when trying to ask for one. However, that doesn't mean that if the child does need it, that you can ask for it, like, hey, my child, here's an example of when we were able to get a one-on-one for a child had severe autism, and he nonverbal, and he would lash out. Some of his some of the ways he would kind of lash out would he was biting himself, or he would hit others. So in order for him to be able to learn in the classroom and for his peers to be able to learn in the classroom, they needed that one-on-one aid to constantly be redirecting him so that he wasn't biting himself, so that other students weren't, in danger. But if those like if that service wasn't needed, that's kind of why they kind of try and prevent that intervention needed. They'll try to do like other supports and services, and then that's not sufficient for him to have an appropriate education. Then they will assess and determine whether a one-on-one is needed. I think I saw another one, couple come through.
Yes, so does any law, sorry, hold on, does any laws help with how they are listed on the child's impairments or disabilities? I'm thinking they mean about the eligibility, how sometimes you have one or primary and secondary on the IEPs. Oh, there's a follow-up. So their child is listed under autism with other health impairments. Previously, it was speech impairment with other health impairment, and they don't want to add ADHD or auditory vision impairment. Now, after 3 assessments, they're saying dyslexia.
Yeah, I think that's a little too specific. And I don't want to be giving out like specific legal advice. So I think, is this Beatrice? Yeah, Beatrice. I would encourage you to reach out. That way I'm not like discussing the child like confidential information with your child or specific, giving specific legal advice on a recorded or public platform. But yes, you can certainly reach out.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And with her question, I want to piggyback for other health impairments. And again, I'm not an expert, but um, doesn't ADHD and I think auditory, doesn't that fall either under OHI and then dyslexia could be like specific learning disability? It's because it's a category, right?
Yeah, it's a category.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any more questions? And then we'll let you guys go enjoy your evening. Let me check here. I have one question here. How would you advise a parent who is requesting a one-to-one and the school BCBA says he does not qualify because he does not engage in aggressive behaviors when she's observing, even though the teacher has a lot of data on engaging in these behaviors?
Okay, so without getting too specific, if you don't agree with a school's assessment, you can request an independent education evaluation. So meaning an outside party that's not the district, assess the child and um, have once they assess them, they kind of assess for that need, and then you have kind of like an outside neutral party stating whether or not, and then they present their own recommendations. You can, other things you can do is like have teachers notate or keep track of behaviors whenever there's, any issues um, with behavior in that sense. But again, without getting too specific.
Thank you for that. Um, what can be done if a student was restrained and you requested an IEP meeting, but the school won't schedule it because the student already has a BIP in place?
Okay. So, what can be done if a student was restrained and you requested an IEP? So, any request for an IEP meeting, I would say you should do this in writing. That way, you have proof that you've requested an IEP meeting, and you can include like the principal, vice principal, and like the special education coordinator. Yeah, I would recommend always requesting an IEP meeting in writing. And you can do it if you're gonna do it in person. I would request you guys get, or I would suggest you guys get like a copy with like a stamp or some sort of like receipt that it was submitted, or do it via email. That's an easier way to keep track and ensures that you have proof that you submitted it. Um, yeah, that's what I would do in terms of requesting an IEP meeting.
Thank you. And if a child is making straight Fs in a middle school and the school is denying an IEP based on them being capable of work, what are the recommended next steps? The student is testing at grade level, so that is their reason to not have the IEP.
This one is a little more specific, so I will encourage Jennifer to reach out to me so that I can give a little bit more, specific guidance or answer that question.
Can you share your email again so that way they can
Yeah.
write, and I can also put it in the chat. So they have your contact to email.
1 second.
And I see someone with their hand up, but I am unable to mute. If you can write your questions in the chat or in the Q&A, I can definitely read them over to her.
Okay, let me go to the page. Here we go. Share.
I'll type it in the chat, your email. Okay, perfect. All right, so I was waiting to see if anybody else had any other questions. Oh, I see the question. Okay. My son has autism and he is hard of hearing and does have self-harm behaviors. He already has an IEP plan, but he hasn't started preschool. Can a one-to-one be requested later?
Yes, you can always make requests to modify the IEP. And you can just do so at any scheduled IEP meeting and say, express your concerns. Like I've noticed, my child is not getting an appropriate education, list why you believe so. Like I'm making a request that he be assessed to determine whether a one-on-one is needed. And again, you don't have to wait for scheduled IEP meetings. If you feel like the IEP team needs to meet before, you can request so in writing.
Yeah. And then I have another question. My son has an IEP and is below grade level, but expected to do fifth grade level work. They've decided to homeschool in hopes on filling in the gap. Can they request modifications to his assignments?
You can ask for. I'm assuming that the level of work, is that what you're asking? The modification to be modified?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, that's a conversation you can have with your IEP team. And then again, just any request, just say like, hey, he's struggling. Maybe this needs to be modified, or maybe the child needs additional supports and services to bring him up to grade level.
So thank you. All right. See if anybody has any more questions. All right, well, we got 7 minutes to spare to give you guys back that time. Thank you again so much, Miss Isabel, for coming on this evening and sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. I know you gave us homework to do. Thanks for sharing your contact. I'm sure families will be reaching out. I will send over the Zoom presentation once the recording gets done with the PowerPoint presentation. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at the Autism Society or also at the Inland Counties Legal Services. They're here to help as well. So thank you so much, and I hope you all have a great evening. Thank you,
Thank you,
Isabel.
everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.